Welcome back to the London Free Press Podcast, another deep dive into a story that a lot of people were fired up about on Twitter, and I think there were some raised eyebrows. Before we get into it, I do want to say lots going on in the city again. Make sure you check it out in the pages of the London Free Press or over at lfpress.com. But today I am joined by London Free Press City Hall reporter Megan Stacey. Megan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for joining me. You are the person to be talking to because there was a lot of eyes on city council this week with regards to a land swap in the north end of the city that may have changed some precedent. So let's talk about the tight vote that happened on Tuesday night that has seen council very divided.
Divided is a good word, Lynzee. And I think, we've seen some of that from the public too, right? So essentially at its heart here, you've got kind of like a three-way deal, city council and veteran developer, Auburn Developments, and then you've got the school board. And so what they arranged is that council ended up voting last night to allow a new residential subdivision, 550 homes in the Northwest on a property that has no development on it yet. It's not been primed for development or serviced or anything like that. That's in Northwest London at the corner of Sunningdale Road and Hyde Park Road. And you've got Auburn, who wants to build there, eager to get those homes up, offering up land south of Sunningdale in another subdivision. And it's offering that property up for a school, a very badly needed school in the Northwest. Thames Valley District School Board. They've got a huge overcrowding problem at Sir Arthur Currie in the area. And so they've essentially said to politicians, listen, we've got the funding to build this new school in the Northwest. We really need it, but we have nowhere to go. That's their story, okay? They can't find land. They've got to build this school. They have to have somewhere to put it. Auburn says, hey, we'll give you this land, but to offset what we're going to lose in development, we need city council to give us the green light to build elsewhere. And where is elsewhere? It's this plot on the edge of the urban growth boundary right there at Sunningdale and Hyde Park Road. So city council signed off on that last night. So now the school board's saying, great, we don't have to expropriate any land for the school. We're going to build here. They've signed a letter of intent with Auburn. They're going to purchase that land, and Auburn's going to move the development and build a little bit more as well at this pocket in the Northwest. So obviously there is some division about that. You had one half of council essentially saying, this is a creative solution in order to find a place to build this school, which we really need. A lot of parents who are, have children at Sir Arthur Currie or are maybe thinking about moving to the area are saying, absolutely, like, get this done. We got to address the overcrowding at Sir Arthur Currie. The other half of council is saying, essentially, this is outrageous. What are you doing? Cutting deals and getting involved in a process that really is not a city process to be involved in, right? Where you locate a school, City Hall doesn't decide that, the school board decides that. And so you had a lot of councillors, you mentioned precedent setting. That was Ward 9 councillor Anna Hopkins, who said, listen, colleagues, we're going to set a very dangerous precedent here tonight by allowing development on the edge of the city, essentially sprawl, right? You've got low density single family homes and then some medium density in townhomes. That's what Auburn's planning to build out there. And, we're allowing that flies in the face of our policies. What about that inward and upward growth we're trying to build in order to curb that costly urban sprawl? What have we done here, right? So there was an 8-6 vote, and then later on in the evening, after Ward 14 councillor Steve Hillier had left, there was a 7-6 vote that almost went another way. We can talk about that next, but essentially you've got a land swap, controversial deal going on here, and council said, yeah, it's worth it. We got to do this for the kids and the parents, even if it means, going against sort of the vision of that London plan and greenlighting a subdivision on the edge of town.
I'm glad that you brought up the second vote, and we're absolutely going to get to that in just a minute. But I have to know, I was watching all of this unfold on Twitter, wasn't watching the meeting at all, just to be completely transparent about that. And I started to wonder, where is the school board in all of this?
Really good question, Lynzee. So the school board has written a number of letters to council and to city politicians, because this has been a debate for many, many months. It's come along through different planning committee meetings and to council a couple of times at different stages. And so they've written letters to council, as I said earlier, saying, hey, we really need this space. And they have also addressed this issue a little bit of expropriation, because that is a power that the school board can use. They've got to appeal to the Ministry of Education, the province, to say, allow us to expropriate this land, because we all know schools are a basic tenet of our society, right? So if there is no room, a school board can say, hey, we're going to take this land to build the school that we need in this area. And so what they've essentially said to council, various school board officials, is expropriation will take longer if we can just iron out a deal here with the developer and they'll sell us the land. That's going to be a lot quicker. And obviously that's in the school board's interest and likely in the interest of some of those parents to address the overcrowding issue. There were a couple of concerns raised by counselors last night as well, though, saying the school board's never really addressed why they cannot just go ahead and expropriate that land. And there was also concern, Councillor Jesse Helmer has raised this a couple of times, saying, listen, the core issue here is an overcrowded school in the Northwest. Why would we allow 550 new families to move in, some of them with their own children? We're just going to be exacerbating the issue. This new school is going to have the same overcrowding problem in a couple of years. So, there's kind of some unanswered questions there. And I'll let you know what came up at the very end of the meeting as council was voting on its bylaws. So bylaws happen at the very end of the meeting, three readings of each. And that's what really puts into action the decisions that council's made earlier in the night. So in this case, you've got a final vote on the bylaw to rezone those lands where Auburn wants to build this low density and medium density housing. And Councillor Jesse Helmer said, listen, I'm going to take one more shot before we vote at this to try and convince you. And he appealed specifically to Councillor Van Holst, which was kind of an interesting scenario. Anyway, so he said, here's why you shouldn't do this. We've got lots of room to build. We've got lots of room to build inward and upward elsewhere in the city. Don't allow this type of building, on the edge of the city. And while this discussion is happening at the bylaws, so again, council's already approved the rezoning earlier in the meeting. You had Councillor Maureen Cassidy say, I've been emailing with a school board trustee who tells me, the very early stages of the expropriation process has already happened. So I went looking for this afterwards. The meeting minutes from a January meeting of the school board show this. The school board trustees directed school board administration, school board staff to start, notifying the province that they'd like to expropriate this Auburn land south of Sunningdale where the school is going to go. They'd like to notify the property owner about getting started on this expropriation process. And that is completely different than, sort of the basis for the council discussion that was had earlier in the night. And Councillor Van Holst even said after hearing that, something to the effect of, wow, that makes a big difference. I might change my vote here. And because that bylaw vote was 7-6, if you had just one member switch their vote, it could have been a completely different conversation. So we're left in kind of this weird situation. I talked to a school board official this morning and they say, too bad, so sad, essentially. Those meeting minutes, it came out of a closed session debate that the school board trustees were having. So technically those meeting minutes are public. Clearly nobody had seen them. It had not been communicated to council that the expropriation process was in its very early stages again, starting. So it's sort of a big question mark here. And, you got to wonder where council goes from here. This is sort of it's an interesting vote for sure. You've got the deal, you've got the fact that they're going ahead with residential development before that area has kind of been primed for it, both with municipal servicing and with, the secondary plan process that normally happens. So it's a wild one for sure, Lynzee. And I think it's going to come up again and again as you see this same tension between developers and City Hall. Where can we build? Let us build on the edge of town, and that struggle about the London plan. Is council ready to uphold those London plan policies?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, we've used the word unprecedented. And that's exactly what this is. If you're listening right now and you want to read more about this, you can do so over at lfpress.com. Megan, thank you so much for your time today. I really don't know what to say about this. It's an interesting story. I've never seen anything like it. So thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Lynzee.
I do just want to mention we are taking next week off, but don't forget, if you're enjoying the podcast, you can always hit subscribe and be notified when new episodes go live. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another edition of the London Free Press podcast. Until then, stay well.